Yay.
Hey there.
Twiddlers 3. Hello, everyone.
Good evening,
Hi.
everyone. Hey there.
How's everyone doing? Good?
Yeah,
Doing
fine.
well.
Nice. So, I'm in Rotterdam. Robin is in Almere. Steph.
Lelystad.
Sorry.
Even smaller place of. Yeah.
And you're in Portugal, Steph?
Portugal.
And Maya is in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I'm in the US.
Okay, nice. Okay. Technology these days.
Wow.
It's crazy. This wild technology.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So actually, we were just discussing what's going to be the topic. We can just throw in anything we think about in the knob twiddlers field, and people who are watching this on YouTube, they can comment in the comments and say hi or ask questions to any one of us. And yeah, there's already one. Julian P says hello. Hello, Julian.
Hello,
Hi.
Julian.
I
We
was
also can do
thinking,
greetings, like if they want to
Yeah.
greet their family and mother.
say hi to your mom.
Maybe congratulate grandmothers if it's their birthday or something like that.
My birthday's tomorrow.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
33 years old.
Okay.
Ah, thanks.
Happy BD.
I'm very
Nice
excited
one.
about it.
So Maya, you understand we have to discuss the Octatrack.
Oh gosh.
Is your name any? Does it have anything to do with the Octatrack, or is
No,
it,
I came up with that name in like 2005. So
Oh, they
years
told
before that
you.
came out. Yeah,
Oh,
I've
right,
been
of
using it
course,
for a very
yeah.
long time.
Sue them.
Because the name I was using before was Maya fucking Morrison when I was doing like IDM stuff. And I came
Okay.
up with Octo Octa because I was studying linguistics, so I just like the two prefixes together. But yeah, it had
Right.
nothing to do with the Octatrack. And actually, I only use the Octatrack for my live sets. I don't
Yes.
use them for at home. I use the MPC 1000 for all my sequencing at home.
Okay.
All
So,
my
but
gear.
you are a user then. You are an Octatrack user.
I am, but I had to like
Yeah.
because I was because I started as a live performer for years. So I used a laptop for years and like really cheap PC laptops. And I burned through all of them. I burned through like a early MacBook and like 2 or 3 PC laptops. So I was trying to get a hardware sequencer for my live set, like something that would feel more, I don't know, stable. I was bringing out the MPC, but I couldn't get my loops right on it. So
Mm.
my friend Harold was doing test run stuff, was like doing testing for Electron and understood it. So I just wrote him being like, I'd like to use an Octatrack, but it's pretty simple. It's mostly for like loop playback of stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I set it up as. It's a really simple setup. I don't do anything fancy with it. It's just it's mostly for like one shots and playback stuff, and then all my other.
But if
gear
it
for everything
works,
else. Oh yeah, I mean it works.
if it works,
great.
then it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and all
That's
the
coming the end
the
of the
time
day,
stretching
isn't it?
and stuff like that on it to get everything in there so that it can be an actual like proper, I don't have to like start and stop it ever unless I hit stop by mistake, which I do often enough anyways. But it's worked. I don't know. It's worked really, really well, and it's so much better than the MPC 1000 was such a nightmare to try to get loops playing through it.
Right. Yeah.
Especially longer pieces, like produced pieces that I have in like 4 different sections for bringing things in and out. It was just a
Right.
nightmare. So I mean, the
But
Octatrack's been really flexible for all that stuff.
Yeah, but has it also proved to be more stable than a PC or?
It has been so far. I'm on my second one, but I blew out the first one because I left I left the like CF card in the back of it, and then traveled with it.
Oops.
And I didn't have like I finally got like a nice Pelican case right before everything happened. So because I was supposed to go out and play more live shows, so I was just using like a nice like a canvas bag with a ton of foam in it. I left the card in it without thinking about it, and it got jammed, and it popped all the pins off in the back.
Ooh.
So I'm on my
okay.
second one, but I will say that I even though I played with them quite a bit, like as long as I had like the tray on top of it to protect it and stuff like
Yeah.
that, it seems like it's been fine. I wasn't having nearly as many. I would have far more issues with the laptop than I did with the Octatrack.
Right.
I mean, it's a laptop
Yeah.
in a box. It just feels a little bit hardier, and it can actually handle the heat in the club for an extended amount of time versus a laptop that feels like they
Yeah.
overheat all the time. I used to put a fan on the bottom of my laptop, looked like a
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
USB to try to keep it cool. And it would work for like 2 hours during the sound check, and then as soon as the place got full, like I had 3 or 4 shows in a row like 4 years ago. I get like 20 minutes in my live set, it just all crash, and I'd be like,
Mm.
I guess I'm
Oh,
playing
wow.
tracks off the USB, like
Yeah.
play my own
Yeah.
music off USB. That's my backup. That's
I
terrible.
think that was my nightmare when I decided to go and play live. There's like I played live in kind of different setups, but I was thinking like what's stable to be the main mothership of the live show, and it's such a debate because like a lot of people debate the stylistic point of view, like looking at somebody that plays from a laptop and looking at somebody that plays from an Octatrack or an MPC or whatever kind of sequencer. And I don't know whether that's for some people that seems to be disturbing when you're implementing the laptop. And I had a close look at Ableton. I was like, but you know what? Like the amount of options on the fly that you can do is probably more live than putting all your MIDI inside or your loops and play those. Like there's no difference. I think people are just not very appealed by the side of a laptop, you know.
Yeah, I would always just tell people because when I switched over to the full hardware setup, people be like, "I love it that you don't have a laptop." I'd be like, "That Octatrack is a laptop in a box." Like, let's not kid ourselves. It's the same thing. It's just with a set of constraints around it.
Yeah, it seems to be that people kind of. I know those are I always call them the notebook ravers that people stand aside and you go like, oh my god, did you see that? You know,
right.
and the reality, I mean, if I've played live in different kind of setups, and when we wrote the last Virginia album for Oscar Tone, because she's a vocalist and we had to think about like how to bring song structure in a 3-piece band onto stage, like how are you going to do that and still be able to for her to stick to an original kind of song structure so she knows when to come in with her vocal lines, versus like how can you make it organic. And then I looked into the Octatrack, I looked into Ableton and into the MPC, and I was like, well, the good thing about Ableton is that we could do a flawless transition an hour live without having to press start stop and having a vocal live show and taking out some of the pieces that were played live on the keyboard and vocoder parts were live and vocal doubles were live, but some drums and stuff they were from Ableton. But the good thing is we could actually make transitions between songs that were new songs because we just put parts together and then added on new 303 lines or whatever we thought fitted the tracks, and then you would have little kind of intermezzos or transitions where there's a 2-3 minute new song where nobody would sing, and that would lead into a new song where she would sing. And I don't think any other piece of equipment would have been able to do that apart from Ableton, you know. So I find it really difficult when people start to bash on like, oh, it's not live, because I think it is so diverse that you can actually, you know, use it in a completely different way. But the screen seems to be such a problem for the audience, for the
it's not
critical
sexy.
audience. Yeah,
right.
you know what I mean?
No, exactly.
But we were trying to do, like, we were looked at it, like studied it and tried all different things and all the things we had to do to get everything tied into the Octatrack. I'm like, I'm gonna go mental by the time the live.
And you don't have that much
I don't know if you
space with
agree.
switching stuff over. Otherwise, you have to switch through program
Yeah.
files. I was able to get it down that I could keep everything without having to switch out program files in it. But I also made things more seamless by I play something on the Octatrack and then I have like a bunch of Volcas and drum machine stuff. So then I do an improvised part and then bring some other parts of the Octatrack in and then go into the next track. So it's a constant back and forth to deal with the not having something like with live before, when I could actually kind of bring those parts together more without so much menu diving and jumping from page to page.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a far more efficient way to play.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't know, Joachim, if you relate to this, like, I mean, in the early days, you probably didn't have the luxury of a laptop, so you had to make it happen. But
Yeah,
now,
Oh,
true.
no,
don't even
because of
get me
all,
don't even get me started. I
yeah,
toured with I toured with you know, like 16 channel mixing desks, you know, keyboard stands, you know, like shit loads of outboard, you know, drum
Same
machines,
here.
samplers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
When I started, I had like
Yeah.
50 kilos of equipment with me.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
50
No,
kilos. You know, yeah, no exception.
it was fun though, because it's pretty much the old school way, you know, just have a bunch of gear and have all the separate outputs coming back on the mixing desk, and that's where you basically arrange your tracks. So it's very similar to yeah, to Ableton. You can throw in you know, different parts and different
yeah.
things and replace, you know, sort of kind of mix songs together. Um, but yeah, I mean, as far as the Octatrack, I'm using it for my setup as well live, and I also use it in a very simple way. But as far as stability, I've had more problems with the Octatrack than my laptop, to be honest.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes it does. You know, I feel that it is sometimes sensitive to you know, humidity or maybe vibrations. I don't know what it is, but
Mm.
you know, it has crept out on me a few times. But
I
it's
mean, if
not
you,
like it's not the
sorry.
main sound, you know. So it's more like I use it in step mode. So I basically program um, drums in addition to whatever else is happening. So they are basically just accents, and to be able to, you know, sort of give something a boost if it starts becoming, or not becoming boring. But whenever I feel like I want to take it into a more, you know, sort of energetic direction, I just add some drums. You know, that's what I use it for mainly, and for effects. So
I
the
think
auxiliary
that,
sends on my mixer, they go back into the Octatrack for effects, and
Mm.
got some effects change there. But yeah,
I
it
think that the
replaced
laptop
us.
with solid state makes a hell of a difference, no?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah.
yeah. But mainly, I mean, you know, the thing is with the live set is to put it together in such a way, whether it's hardware or software, that you have the flexibility to interact, you know, very quickly. You have to really understand
Right.
your machine. It's basically your instrument, you know. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so whatever you use, that's the main thing, you know. As long as you can fit your ideas into a setup that is flexible enough to react to whatever's going on in the room, or where you want your thing to go next, you know, and being stuck to a playlist, or if you even can change the tempo of something because your loops won't fit or something, you know, that's just a very annoying limitation.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the style of the music as well. If you want to do like a very spontaneous type of techno that is very improvised with a couple of layers, that you have an opportunity to do lots of modulation and effects, and
Mm,
it doesn't have to be within certain um, let's say within a structure of known songs. Then you have so much freedom. You know, I can even imagine
Hmm.
just bringing a circle on stage and connecting everything, and it just
Mhm.
go and
mm,
just see what
Yeah.
every sequence does. And then, you know, if you would add loads of drumming, it starts to happen, you know. And if you're just playing songs that people know, oh my god, he's or she's playing this, you know, and then you like, there's recognition because you're playing a tune that people know from the record. Or if you're bringing a bunch of new material on stage, I think that's a little bit more less complicated, you know, if you can just say like, okay, I'm doing a live show and nobody knows what to expect. I mean, I've never done that, and that for me is very that's a goal that I want to reach at some point, where you just go on stage and you don't know, like maybe you set up a little bit of a thing, but then you just
Hmm.
go and see what happens. And then I think you don't have to rely on a laptop or something pre-programmed so much, as you can just, you know, bring a couple of good machines that, you know, that are
Yeah.
very hands-on, you know.
Yeah.
There were a few years ago, I like used to bring a notebook for my live sets that would have a bunch of notes on it for things. And I was talking to my friend who was throwing the party. I was like, yeah, the notebook's pretty good. It has everything organized, but like I left it the other night by mistake and like had a like it was a little more spontaneous. It was actually really fun. And he just like closed the notebook and took it away. He's like, it sounds like you don't need the notebook. I was like, oh, I guess you're right. I don't need it. I don't need it. And like everything was a lot more fun after that too, because it's like I have a bunch of stuff on there. It's like, but it's you know, the music that's you know in the sampler is 4 hours worth of music, and there's you know it's typically like like an hour and a half live set. So there's plenty of space so that it's still different. It would be different every single time. Plus all the improvising in between really made it a lot of fun.
You know, playing live should somehow be a dangerous thing. You know, there should be an element of danger in it. You know, just to keep you on your toes and to push yourself to, you know, it shouldn't be too easy. If you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I first started out, I was with, you know, just a laptop and a controller, and it was very much, this is, you know, 12, 13 years ago, it was very structured. And it's just like over the years, slowly taking all of that away so that it could actually, because it'd get boring, you know. But also, I understand people start somewhere. So sometimes people are like, I have a playlist.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, you got to see, that's what you got to start
like,
with. You got to start with
when
that.
you kick off and you do your first live show, I mean, and I think also it makes a difference. Like there are people in, like there are artists that only play live. So it's like their hands are like so full, you know, trained to maybe troubleshoot during a live show if something goes wrong or when it gets risky. And I think like and I think it's in our cases we combine it like DJ and live, and then it gets a little bit more complicated because you have to divide your attention. It's a shame. Sometimes I wish I'd say like, okay, let's do a year of only live, because then you can deeply explore the feeling of playing live and
and you
build in the risk, you know.
Yeah, you get tighter and tighter as it goes on. When I would just do a whole ton of live shows in a row, it would be insane how like the last couple shows would be, because you just get so used to it, you get all this muscle memory.
Probably your last show, it's like, oh yes, I'm finally there,
and then it's like back to DJing for another 2 months.
It's a different vibe.
Yeah, I like playing live a lot because it used to be like more in the early 90s. It was more like a band kind of situation where you would do an album which would be your thing for like a year. You know, that would be something you had to kind of recreate or represent if you would do a live show. You know, and if you add to that the waiting times to get your record out, you know, you finish your record, you spend like a whole bunch of time to make your album, and then there comes this annoying long wait before it's out, and then after that you have to tour with it, so you're already completely sick and tired of the music before you even go on the road.
Sure, totally.
I've had that as well. Yeah.
Right.
With touring.
Jochen, this might be an interesting question also for the people who are watching this, like, because like I've seen you play Lowlands live, and this is like, it must have been mid-90s or something, and I know that you had a whole setup. Can you remember that? Like, does that ring a bell? This is like a long time ago.
Yeah, of course I remember Lowlands, but I played there several times.
But it's just like maybe mid-90s or something. But would you take out the whole original setting that you wrote the album with and take that on stage, or would you even in those times like shrink it down and try to use a sampler so it was a little bit more easy for you to do a one-person live show? Or how
I've done it both ways around. So I've done live shows which were basically a representation of the studio version. So try to not to completely recreate, but use some of the samples you didn't use for the album, or you generate like an insane amount of stuff when you are writing a big project. There's always things that didn't make it, or that are left over or kind of hidden and stuff. And so from that whole sound that you are into at that moment, I've done like modifications to it, or versions that would work better in a live environment, so basically like you said, shrink it down and do that. But I've always also done one album, the Loudboxer album was actually written as a live show. So I started, I used two Yamaha SU700s to play live. They could only load one one track at the time, so I had two, and I mixed between them. So I was loaning one setting on, one track on the first one, and then while I was playing the second one, it was like a whole bunch of work, but it was fun. And then I wrote all these tracks just for the live show. I didn't even intend to do an album. It was just that was my arsenal. I built like a big arsenal of music to play live. And at some point I thought, if I just stitch all these things together, and or I multi-track them and sort of iron out the imperfections or whatever, then this could be an album. So that's what I made that album. It's all hardware samplers that I played for years actually, and then I put everything together as an album. But by that time as well, I was quite fluent on these machines, this setup, so it was easy to record it.
That's an amazing thing if you release the album afterwards instead of playing the album that you've produced.
Yeah, it was the other way around. That was that was at some point the idea. Okay, I'm creating all this music, and people have only ever seen it played live. Logical conclusion: why don't I do an album?
Right.
Otherwise, I'm just sitting on all that stuff without ever doing anything with it.
Wasn't that that Loudboxer album one of the examples that's ended up that way?
Sorry?
That wasn't the Loudboxer album one of the projects that ended up that way, that you had like lots of music, this big arsenal, and then
everything that's on Loudboxer was first part of a live set that I did. Yes, exactly. Let's see if there are any comments. By the way, people, you can comment in the YouTube comments, and if we see something
in the box
you want us to talk about, then we definitely will. Let me see. I saw something that connected to this. Here. Ken.
Oh, that's interesting.
Ooh.
Okay, go.
What I always try to do when I also when I started doing this, I started playing live. I did that for many years, and then after that I started doing the DJing thing a bit. But what I always try to do is choose a good balance between structured parts and room for improvisation. And I think for everyone that's different. I think that there are people that like to improvise everything. There are other people that might have like to have a very structured set. And so a percentage of programmed parts versus improvisation.
Name a percentage. What? 33%.
I don't think there's like a fixed percentage that like works. I think that's different for everyone. I think what you need to do is to just find a good balance between room for improvisation and structured parts, if you will. For yourself, it depends what you want and what you feel comfortable with.
I mean, for me, it worked out. It worked out as like 50%, because it's like all my improvised tools are three Volcas. So it's 2 Volca keys and a Volca FM. So it's always like I do half, because then after I'm done the improvising, I'm like, that's kind of run its course. Start working on the next thing, and while that's going, I can start kind of, since there's nothing saved on it, I can start kind of programming stuff in there and getting it ready, and like listening to the key that the song's in, so that I can have it, start building out a track out of that. And then just having that cycle's good. It's also good. It's just like when an improvised thing isn't working for me, you play it for 2 minutes and you're like, all right, let's go to something that I know is at least going to be, have a little more backbone to it than the thing I'm trying to twiddle out in front of, a few thousand people now.
You can also you can also just pretend it was intentional.
Like, sure, right?
Because
it's my weird, my weird bridge between these tracks.
I think it's fair to say that, like, in the drumming lies the most freedom to decide what you're gonna do. Like if you I like to bring in like a TR8 or TR8S so that you on the fly you can decide like,
Yeah.
oh, this is nice if the vibe's going. So you would add an open hi-hat or a 16 shaker or whatever. Or you reprogram it, or if you want to, get like one of the guys who's very famous for clapping along like Kink when he does the whole tick, 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 roll on the and people like if for an audience that's stuff that gets people going. If that's the direction your live set's going, unless you're going really experimental and deep, and it's not about any rhythmic elements, but I like to say that the drum elements are the ones that are very easy to play with, that you don't have to pre-program per se, because it's if you're on a step sequence, so it's very easy to on the fly get all the elements in and just fade them in and get it going. And you don't have to think so much about key. It's nice if you know how to get your toms into the right frequency so that it sounds nice with your strings, but you'll
find me pitching stuff around and trying to listen really closely, or the off note that I hit on the thing. I like listen like, no, that's wrong. Okay, that's the right one. There we go. A single like raw note just like blares out, and you're like, all right, no, a little bit closer.
Yeah, so
but it's live, it's okay. That's
right,
what I
totally.
think.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's jazz, baby.
yeah.
It's freeform.
In a way, it's true. Yeah, I mean, it's highly comparable to jazz. Basically, you basically set a scale and a tempo, and then you just see where you go, where you end up. Yeah, I mean this.
Somebody's saying something.
Yeah, so Jack. I'm gonna get Jack out of the frame again because Steffi is now. But he talks about
young, make me look. Just block the rest of my face.
But hello, Jack. He's talking about the excitement felt by the audience, and I think that's an important point. If you make it too pre-planned and too static, I mean, it can still be enjoyable, but if you really see somebody sweat over something and you get these magic moments where all the parts click together and it's something completely new and unheard. So everything is oops,
you're back.
Yay.
I'm back.
You're back. Yeah.
Yeah, as a performer, those are the most exciting moments. When you hit that sort of magic moment when everything clicks together and all the parts fall in their place.
And you can see that. You can typically see that feedback on the performer themselves as they start playing and seeing them get more excited and getting into what's happening. It's always a feedback loop with that.
Exactly. So it's a bi-directional thing. Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. That was all on playing live. There's also some studio questions. Here we go. Unknown artist. Don't know this person. Anybody wrote music for film, soundtracks, or scores?
Yes, I have.
Nice one.
I'm even on the IMDb database. It's like the movie database.
Oh, nice.
I'm even listed.
It's official.
So, I don't know if that's, but yeah. But it's true actually. That's excellent. That's true. No, okay. No. There was another thing that we talked about. No, okay, never mind. The movie that I worked on was. Like a little independent movie for some guy in Amsterdam, but I think it's a lot of fun to do. Absolutely.
But can you maybe I'm probably the one that's actually asking the question instead of unknown artist. Because I saw the other day, I saw somebody saying like, oh, it's so nice to use Ableton 10. I don't use Ableton so much in the studio, but I'm trying to keep up with a lot of DAWs at the same time. And somebody was saying like, oh, it's nice to have the sound, the visuals, and then to write the film music, it's nice to have the sound and the images next to each other. Like, do you have a preference for a certain program that makes it easier to get a good flow going? Because it's not that you write the music and then they like, oh, this is nice for the scene. I think you have a saying in this, no? Or how did that go?
What I had is the director let me look in, when he filmed the short film, and then he discussed a little bit what he was looking for, and of course he was very familiar with what I was doing music wise. And then for certain scenes, I just came up with ideas. I sent it to him, and then we both looked at what he filmed and the music that I composed. And then we, luckily I was right. I had made the right stuff, and then I just fine-tuned things a little bit, and then it ended up being used.
But so what I'm trying to say is, like, do you have the scene in your computer while you're composing? Do you know this?
Most DAWs let you import QuickTime movies. Yeah, so you get
really.
I've done a couple of these things too, and
that's what I did with Ableton as well.
Yeah, you just throw in the QuickTime movie, and it recognizes. It's basically spread on a timeline as the same way as an audio file. And you can mute the audio if you want to, and then just start to build your own stuff underneath. But of course, what always happens when you send the music, they return a different version with a different and tiny edit, and you have to redo the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah, that happened to me as well once. Yeah, but I luckily the guy that I worked with was he didn't really edit stuff like scenes and all after I provided the music. Because if a director edits, if a movie gets edited, then sometimes things need to be changed again music-wise as well. But I guess I was lucky regarding that. So yeah,
that's it. But that's the thing with Sorry, go on.
Well, I want to say that I really like to do stuff like that. I think it's a great thing to do outside of what we normally do. I find it very
different. It's a totally different approach, because there is always already a very tight frame or a direction, set before you. I mean, you can interpret it in your own way. Otherwise, that's why probably the director has asked you to do the music. But I think for me, the when I worked on these things, the time restriction or the actual length and the events happening within the image is you don't always have to take direct cues, but sometimes you have to. Like when things happen in time. And that can be a challenge, to get this kind of flowing right and synchronized, not synchronized in an absolute time sense, but synchronized in how the story develops.
With what happens in the movie. Yeah, for sure.
And normally we are used to taking center, the main role when we are musicians or DJs or whatever. Then we basically have everything in our power to sort of project our sound, onto an audience or onto a recording. Mm-hmm. But you have to play with a whole different, power or layer when you do music for anything visuals or anything visual, like an advert or a game or
it's like more a supporting role because the main thing what it's about is what people see and not necessarily what people hear.
So you have to leave your ego at home.
Sure.
Yeah,
might
correct.
Not be easy for everybody,
right?
It's a delicate task. But that's interesting because there's lots of people that are only writing music for film, and they've never
Right.
Yeah.
performed
Yeah,
live or never appear in a club or festival, or it's interesting how
it's a whole different discipline, you
different
know.
roles.
Yeah.
I just started doing music for a documentary. They licensed a bunch of my music, but they wanted some like original material for things. And the notes I've gotten so far are just so vague. They're just like, here's like a 20-second clip, and we want like something ambient. It's like, okay,
Oh,
I'll
and
try.
then you
It's a
cater
look.
to right.
It's because I haven't gotten like full like clips or of like scenes. It's just like little tiny sections of it. It seems it's been difficult trying to like think about it in a different way.
Yeah. Do you find
Yeah.
it? Where's your difficulty in this case?
Oh, I just don't know like what the particular they're like, we want something like ambient but dancey. It's like, okay, I think that's a very broad
Yeah, that's
ask.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So not quite understanding when there's also some other people working on it, what scenes before, scenes after, how that would fit in a wider thing of like an episode, because it's like a documentary series. It's like in the within the structure of the episode, but it's we'll see. I'm trying something new. I finally have time to do it.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Well,
dealing with. Sorry.
Well,
No, I was going to say. Oh, delay.
you first, Jochen. Go first.
Yeah, staying on this subject, dealing with the briefings is also a very challenging thing. If you're working with people who, I mean, especially if I mean, we talk about mostly, instrumental electronic music, right? And it's always a very interesting challenge to kind of get the briefing from the person who's briefing you, the notes about what they want. I want something dark and melancholic, and or even more abstract terms,
Right.
and then you make something along those terms, and it's no, and they send you a YouTube link, and that's something completely different.
Yeah.
Sure, right. Of course, right.
Still might still be dark
postmodern
and
society.
melancholic. Yeah,
That's not
exactly.
dark.
Yeah.
What do you mean dark?
Yeah.
No, but that's what I wanted to say as well. Communication is very, very important.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like a
absolutely.
constant back and forth.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Because
But I think
then,
and doesn't it depend on the like if also if you have to deal with somebody that's very like for example the one that's pitching for the music or that curates the music and asks you to do the music, whether this is a very wide informed person or somebody just heard your name and like, oh, that's the guy we need, or the girl or the person we need to get, like depends. Sometimes you have to, you're dealing with people and they want something of you and you're like, have you actually heard what I'm doing?
Sure, right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and sometimes it's like it's kind of like picked on the fact that you're happening at the moment, or you have a hype or a peak in your career, and then they'll pick you, and then if they listen to what you bring to the table, they're like, oh, but we thought maybe like this or that. That's also something that you can bump into, like
Right.
when they're not really not sure what you're doing.
yeah, it does make a difference. Absolutely.
Or they want a
Yeah.
copy of something that you've already. Oh,
Right.
hey,
Let's go
Scott.
deep and talk about inspiration, people.
All right.
Okay.
Inspiration for making electronic music from other artists, or from based on background setting,
Question.
blah blah blah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I asked this question quite a lot, to be honest. Where do you get your inspiration? It seems to be something which is very abstract to people who are not making music or or creators in other disciplines. And it's certainly not from other people's. Well, not certainly. I wouldn't say certainly not from other people's music, but it doesn't have to be in the music domain at all. It can be from anything. And I must say, inspiration is a very important thing, because I see inspiration as not only in the field of ideas, but also in the field of how do I I got myself stuck here, but it's not only this abstract thing, you know. It can also be just something that happens when you didn't think you had inspiration at all. So if you set yourself to work on something without being massively inspired, you know, by engaging in the process, you often stumble upon things which then in turn inspire you to go into a certain direction, you know. So
Yeah.
It's also, I think, a really important approach about creating something is to get the circumstances right where things can happen, you know. I mean, if you sit behind a laptop and just wait for inspiration, you know, it's not going to happen, you know what I mean? So if you want to, you have to kind of set up the circumstances, and with the circumstances I mean maybe you know, connect a bunch of machines that you think might be interesting, you know, as a chain of instruments, and or like if you work with modular, it can be you know, idea for a patch, you know, like a system or something. It can be signal flow, or it can be you know, combinations of how, you know, it can be, yeah, how you can get contrast going in something, you know, with pieces of gear that are maybe very different or might complement each other in various ways. And from that, you know, when you create something which a setup or a technical circumstance which might surprise you, you can always get inspiration from that. You know, you start fooling around, and all of a sudden it clicks, and then off you go. You know, so it's not only strictly an abstract idea, you know, and you can invoke inspiration basically by setting things up in such a way that, you know, interesting things can happen. What about you guys?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's multi. It has many facets of many things can happen. Like the most interesting thing I always wondered is like when you're younger and there's big composing artists like Prince and Nile Rodgers and stuff like. So okay, where did they get their inspiration from? And I read Nile Rodgers' book, and he said that Chic was actually a project that came together, and the inspiration they used was Kiss and Roxy Music. It was a fusion. It was supposed to be a fusion of Kiss and Roxy Music, and I thought that was so amazing.
It's an amazing starting point, yeah.
If you listen to, if you listen to Roxy Music, if you listen to Kiss, and then you put Chic or anything Chic related that they wrote in the middle, you're like, and how exactly did they hear the overlap between these two projects? And then later on in life, when I was producing, I sometimes would think like, oh, you know, there's a certain type of sound you're trying to make. If that, like, just make it like I was telling you, Jochem, the other day when I arrived in Portugal. Because of the COVID situation, I packed up a suitcase of gear from my Berlin studio and opened it up here, and just started to do simple insert chains. Like, okay, I'm going to put my drum computer through a dread box. This is an effect box with spring reverb and flanger, chorus, and delay, and then through a compressor, and then through another thing, and start to tweak around with this. And because that's a different signal flow than what I would normally do in the studio, it got me some crazy things that I would normally not get by using my normal setup. And I think it's a combination of something that you want to reach, like a goal that you have in your head, that could be a point of inspiration, or a free fall, like, all right, today I'm not going to think about anything and just start. Or like, what happens if I combine these two machines, or in people that work with modular systems, like looking for different signal flow, and that all of a sudden gives you something that, you know, presses the button, and you go like, ooh, this is hot. Like, I think I'm going to put a beat or a hi-hat or something else, or a string, or I think it can be from all kinds of different sources, and I think whatever source it is, it's always fine, you know, as long as
sure.
you're happy with the result.
Yeah.
Like some
Yeah, it's
people
funny-
are
it's
highly
funny,
inspired.
I
you know?
agree.
Yeah, it's funny how
Absolutely.
it's funny how the brain works, because if you, for example, look at movies or paintings or whatever, the things your brain picks out to be the interesting thing about it might be completely different from what the other person thinks about it. So in that sense, you can draw a lot of inspiration from other art, you know, like the aesthetic of a certain painting or something, which is not musical at all, but you can also apply in a musical way. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
Mhm.
that kind of things. Yeah.
And
I
I think
pulled most of my inspiration for everything by essentially trying to be like I mean, I've been doing electronic music since I was 15 years old. I'm about to be 33, so it's been a long time. And it's the approach
of
I
your life.
eventually took. Yeah, right, my life.
Yeah.
And so essentially it's just like I've always seen myself as a mostly autobiographical artist, where essentially it's just what happens to me every day, what I have to process, what I have to deal with in the public, what's going on in my life, relationships, family, etc. has always been the process for getting things done, and always has a kernel in there, even though we're talking about, you know, mostly instrumental music with, you know, me not singing over it. But
Mm.
that seems to have been my main point for like every time I finished some piece of music, if it has something to do with my life or some processing that I've put through it to create that thing, that's always meant more at the end than just like a really cool track that's just like a banger.
Mm.
Like I'll
Yeah.
have like, you have like a banger at that's the way I always look at it, is like you have this like really cool club track at the end, but I don't understand what that has to do with me or what's going on in my life, and it's not necessarily like I could go play it, it would be functional, but it wouldn't necessarily have any deeper meaning behind it for me personally playing it. So I just don't put those things out. It's just
Yeah.
like that's always been the focus of everything. And as my life has changed over the years, of course the things have changed, you know, along with it. Or like the very direct inspirations. Like I live out in a log cabin in the woods in New Hampshire. My past like 3 pieces of music have been based around how my life has been here versus when I was living in Brooklyn or something.
Okay.
Right, interesting. So your surroundings do inspire you a lot when you write music. Like
Yeah, I think so, for
where you
sure.
are. Mm,
I think
Surroundings,
different
yeah,
places
absolutely.
and settings for sure
Yeah,
can do
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Also with traveling and DJing a lot of, like, you know, you go, if you don't go play for a while and then go play, that'll get me really excited to go back home and start working on something and thinking
Yeah.
about something that had happened while I was on
Yeah.
tour at some place. You know, it's all trying to be part of that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a big difference if you're in
Hmm.
Oh wait, I'm trying to read the thing here.
Yeah, somebody's asking you a question.
bunker in an urban environment. Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. Hey Dan,
Hi
how do you know
Dan.
when a track is done? When do you know when to stop working on a track? When you know when it's done?
When you don't want to work on it anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
That's when it's done. Working 2 weeks on just the hi-hat's not going to make that track any better. It's either a good track or it isn't. That's what I think.
In fact, you might have the chance to kill it. You know, if you
Yeah.
If you
stay in there
overwork
for
it,
too
yeah,
long.
it loses
Yeah,
all
yeah.
all the vibe that's supposed to be with it. It's done when it's done. Just set it aside.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as you lose the feeling of the spark that initially set you to do this, go in this direction. Yeah, I mean, it needs to be there until the end. You know, as soon as you start to lose it, and when you start focusing on details that don't really matter to convey the idea, you know, then it's time to stop. Yeah, definitely. And you can be unhappy with some things in the track still. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been trying to get better at just like mix downs since forever. I'm still struggling with it all the time, but
Yeah,
you know, I get it as close as close as possible to what I can do with my abilities, and then it's like that's it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go work on something else.
Starting
I'm
something
not.
new is
I don't
easier.
have that. I can't totally change it around.
Yeah, starting on something new is always easier than slaving over something.
Yeah, and you can always
that
go
is-
back now. You know.
Yeah, true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the magic of saving everything. Yeah,
Right. You just have to remember what version was the last one.
Yeah.
Was it final, or was it final X final, or was it final
yeah,
final
yeah.
XX final
Oh.
3? No, it's the real final
Yeah,
done
right,
final.
right.
Yeah. That's something you have to learn. It's a good tip actually. It's a really good producing advice. Just make sure you got a really understandable archiving method. If you somehow end up with all this shit on your desktop and you don't know what's what, that's just really frustrating. But yeah.
My partner Eris, she whenever she saves it, she saves the date and the time of that version for it, which
Okay.
seemed to have worked really well. I have a notepad that when I'm finishing the record to just put the file names in there so I remember it if I have to jump back. But I only recently started doing that. I've lost so much stuff because of bad file names.
I just render out every version that I do. So every saved version has an audio file associated to it.
Yes.
And that's usually how I go through things,
Right.
So I'll just throw everything in iTunes, in whatever work in progress or wherever I put it. And then I don't even go through the files, I just go through the music, through how it sounds, because that gives you the most instant
that's interesting.
Impression of where you were with the track.
So you bounce
So
a stereo, you bounce a stereo wave or IF or something like this, and then you throw that in iTunes for your reference to listen to what you've done.
Yeah, I'll keep the files on my hard drive, but also in iTunes, just to have a quick player, so I can swap between them really quickly, so I can hear the differences in the mix decisions that I've done, like really quickly. You don't have to open up the whole sequencer, and
No, you just play the file. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can. Yeah, so it's really easy. Yeah, and plus, you don't get distracted by all the visual stuff in your sequencer that might distract you. You can see, that's where I use that EQ, or that's where, and then you start thinking about in that domain again, and it's best to just just listen to how it sounds, basically. When
I'm listening to tracks, when I try not to look at the sequence, what's going, predicting and thinking things that are about to come, versus just listening to the thing at the time. It's like trying to wall, don't look at the screen while trying to listen back to the thing. So it's not there's no predictions coming with it. You can actually just listen to what the music is.
That's an interesting thing. That
Maya.
Oh,
look who's here.
Hi, Sophia. Hello.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see if there's anything else in here.
So, actually, Sophia was asking a question, I think.
Sorry, I missed that. Okay.
In the
chat
on
question.
There's one in the
here we go. Yeah.
Chat.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Would you let me see what was the process like for that track? Oh, that's easy. That was the first really straightforward dance song I made. It's on my first record. It came out in 2011. I was making lots of IDM and breakcore before that. I was playing shows, and then I was in a band that was a dance punk band at the same time also, and was having more fun doing the dance punk band than I was playing a bunch of IDM and breakcore. So I wrote that track, and then I played it at a show, and then everyone danced for years. So I don't know. It made me write actually slightly more straightforward dance music, but the process behind it is so long ago. It's all written in Ableton.
Okay. So no magic to reveal behind that track.
No, other than it was working in a new genre. Essentially, was the one thing that was really exciting. Is I was going out and dancing. I was playing lots of electronic music and wanted other people to dance too, and doing really spastic breakcore was not getting people around me dancing. More of just kind of standing back, being that sounds cool, but I don't know. And then I wrote that, and everyone was dancing. I was like, there we go. That's what I was waiting for. That's it. I guess the process was just trying something new, and then that just led me on to what I've been doing for the past 10 years. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's often a recipe for something interesting. Just try something you haven't done before, right?
Right.
That's always could end up disastrous, but
Sure.
could be really nice too.
It worked that time.
Yeah.
But often if it's disastrous, nobody knows.
Right.
No.
So yeah.
And
You're
what
the
is a
only one that
disaster
knows
to
the
you?
mistake. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what is a disaster to you might not be a disaster to
Yeah.
anyone else, you know, or someone else.
Exactly.
Here is something directed to Steph,
Ah.
and
Hey.
it's almost impossible to not butcher this name.
Yeah,
but
I was gonna say the same.
yeah.
Like greetings to T. It's Neckniff. All right, okay.
Well, it's actually
No, it's
not
not to
directed
me
to
actually.
Steffi.
Well,
No.
it's not a secret that I am addicted to the Circlone, but like it's more to you guys what you're using as a sequencer.
Well, but why do you like that sequencer so much?
Well, I used to write use Logic as the main sequencer, and I when I wrote my first album, it was for me it felt like I needed to loosen up a little bit more. I had a feeling I was trapped too much into this, like playing the MIDI notes and moving around. It wasn't really.
We'll tend to pass.
I mean, it did its job,
Right.
and I'm very thankful for the result of the first album. But I wanted to kind of like widen the horizon, and then somebody said, I think it was Fred P. I bumped into him at a party, and I think he mentioned something like this new sequencer coming out, and I went on YouTube, and Colin, who's actually the one that invented the Circlone, he made a sequencer called P3, and then he was ready to launch the Circlone, and he had his fantastic Scottish YouTube video of describing his new sequence, and I looked at it and I'm like, oh my god! I was like literally looking at the video, going like, yes,
Yeah.
yes, man.
That's it. Yeah.
Like, and then somebody said to me like, whoa, there's a massive waiting list. So actually we have two here. So the first one I actually grabbed off eBay. I went online and it was like, oh, forget about it. So waiting list is very long, yada yada. And then I went on eBay and there was one for sale, and it's I think it was in the US or something. And I was like, oh my god, there's one. And somebody said like, if you want one, grab one, because if you have to sign up with Colin, it takes a while. And then I grabbed that one and had the CV Gate a breakout box with it. And it completely changed the way of working, changed the way of working and using Logic as a multi-track recording device rather than trying to compose into Logic. So for me to go and do everything on the sequencer and on the steps it gave me so much more freedom. In my head was like, it was like something was breaking open and able for me to write in a completely different way. And now it's a nice way of switching between the writing something in Logic, writing it back into the Circlone, and then the other way around. For me, it was really necessary to make a next step into the world of producing music, because I was a bit stuck the way I was writing it.
So you mentioned Logic. Are you still in Logic, or are you? You said you were in Ableton too, right? So what?
Yeah, I'm in Ableton too, but I tend to I do work with different people. I like to collaborate a lot, and then it's easy because most of the people write in Ableton, and I also do some teaching and stuff, and the younger generation likes to write in Ableton. But I tend to switch back to Logic because when I'm actually arranging, I can see it better. You know how you can see your song and you can actually see what's happening. I just color code everything so I can also see the structure of the song. Especially when I work with vocals, it's really nice for me. And Ableton tends to be a little bit too small, but I don't have any debate about like this sounds better or that, because Ableton for me is an amazing tool for live and for different things. And but when I do like really like song structure based stuff, I tend to fall back into Logic because it's just my safe space, I guess, you know. And it's a bit more I can it's a bit more precise in the way I can see the whole song than in Ableton. You know, it's a bit more difficult for me. But I think that's just, you know, like whether you like to ride a motorcycle or a sports bike or something.
Yeah.
Both are fun and both have
Yeah.
their advantages and the negative sides. But like for me, it's just Logic seems to be more comfortable.
Have you
So,
checked out
Yeah.
the Logic 10, or is it? Yeah, Logic X 10.5? It was just released the other day.
ooh.
Like
Yeah,
yesterday
they-
or the day
It's actually
before
Ableton.
yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got this live loops in now in there now,
Oh.
which is very it reminds me of Ableton a little bit. Basically, you can get I think they're vertical rows of clips which you can, like in it's just the other way around in Ableton. You know, it's vertical, but they have these clips that you can combine, and then you can swap between scenes, basically just as in
Yeah.
Ableton, and they just keep looping. So you basically, the sequencer holds it just plays this row of clips, and then you can switch to the next one and then the previous one, or randomly or whatever.
That
And
was a
it's
matter of time, wasn't it? That until they wanted to.
yeah, that's been a
it.
really pain in the ass issue for a long time, you know, dealing with audio in Logic. That's
Yeah.
actually why I left it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Because the speed of the workflow, in Ableton. I've worked last week. I've worked in Ableton, and I'm just like, it's amazing. I mean, it's so fast, and the way you flip an audio sample and the processing and how easy that is, instead of like having to say, okay, bounce in place, reverse and stuff. Like it's so simple in Ableton, and I think the debate goes back where the warp quality was an issue, but now of course they've been doing brilliant work. So I think it's just a matter of like what you use and how you use it and
What you feel comfortable with.
yeah. And I think at some point they will meet in the middle and
I think so too. Absolutely.
you know, and I think it's amazing to know all of them. I would love to have the same knowledge as I have in Logic and Ableton and in Pro Tools, for example, because especially when you work with a lot of different people or vocalists or you know, you implement other artists into your production world, it's nice to not having to say, oh, but I'm in Logic, you know. Oh, okay, well then forget about it, you know. Like it's nice to be able to bounce up files up and down. I've like actually when I wrote music with Martijn, it was a whole process in Logic via Skype, you know. Like this is like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, and you know, it's nice to be able to do that with everybody. Just say like, oh, you're in Ableton, all right, I'll just open that and be able to work with that as fast as in Logic. I think that's a big advantage.
Yeah, I would love to use the Circlone as the main machine, you know. I've used it a bunch of times, and it's incredibly powerful, and the timing is rock solid. And yeah, it's a really comprehensive machine. I for some time I had the idea, okay, I'm just going to get rid of the screen altogether and just you know, record everything using that. But I mean, to generate material, you know, to generate sequences and to get things done quickly, because it's pretty much like a TR type step sequencer, you know, although it's way more advanced.
Has a little bit of the feel of a 909, like
exactly, yeah, big knobs, yeah.
And I mean, he has thought of so many things which I find very appealing in a hardware sequencer. If you want to put your computer aside, and this has nothing to do with the fact that a computer is a bad thing, but sometimes when you're arranging or you're composing, you can be too locked into okay, so at 49
to what you're seeing instead of hearing. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think personally, when I'm programming something, there's certain tricks that like, oh, it works if I do this, or like I like to quickly remove my or move my claps from left to right, and then you don't have to notch it or something. You could just like bam bam, and it has a kind of especially when you're starting a new song, it has a lot of live feel to it, because you're on the circle and you're typing it in, and you're not like
you're working the instrument. Yeah.
You're working the instruments, and you press record, you capture all
The moment.
info, you capture it,
Yeah.
you can keep on looping it, you can just extend it and stuff. So you don't have to like during the process of making a song, you don't have to go back to the computer and say, okay, stop, hold on, oh shit, the clap is too much to the right or left, or I need to quantize it. And I felt I always had to go back to the computer to correct it, and now on the circle, like, it's good, like bam bam bam, it's on there, and it runs and and even with all your CC messages, I'm not very good at that, but if you look at some people who are completely like layered with all the options of the circle, you can just customize it so that it's almost like it's almost like also like a MIDI interface that's completely assigned to all your machines, and on the forum people are writing templates for certain certain synthesizers or workstations and stuff, and exchange that. So it has a lot of depth where you don't have to necessarily look at a screen if you want to step away from that working method. For me, that was very important, and when I saw that triggered my enthusiasm, and also gave me instant results.
I also think I've used a lot of hardware sequences in the past, and like MPCs or even the Alices, and before that even things like Fast Tracker on the Atari and stuff like that. So I think the chaining patterns type of songwriting is actually quite interesting, because it's way more, you basically make your scene, which is a pattern, and then think about where it should go next, and just focus on that little thing, and then you can keep adding stuff, or and changing around, and then with the song already in mind, you basically work in stages of the track, and it's pattern chaining is a really powerful way to get something together, because in a lot of DAWs you are very drawn to the endless loop approach,
yeah,
are we still here?
In a glitch, but you're back.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean, working in computers, it's very easy to get drawn into the endless loop kind of thing, and then just maybe mute or unmute stuff to come up with ideas for certain combinations. But if you write the whole thing as a pattern, then it's solid. It's there. It's quicker in that way, I think.
I totally agree with what you're saying, and that is something that I needed to have also to keep the fun into quick composing, because I think one of the very heavy things that I bumped into when I was first starting to make music is that, like, I had it cycled in a loop in the DAW, and I was like, oh, I can't listen to it anymore. Whereas on the step sequence, I can instantly change it, or say, like, okay, what if this plays 4 times and that plays 3 times, and one of the drum pattern changes here? Oh, do I like this? No. Okay, within a split second, I can mute it or turn it off, or just only
you can change it. Yeah,
exactly. And you get a little bit of a feeling for a song within like a few minutes. You don't have to go all the way into the composition to know if it works, and for me that worked. But having said that, like, I don't like to go into any debate of like, that's better than this or this. I think it has to.
No, I think it depends what works for you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, for example, I have I have an analog rhythm here, and analog rhythm, with their latest updates, you have a MIDI out from the sequencer.
Oh, yeah.
So and the analog rhythm has like a TR-909 style sequencer,
Yeah.
which is very powerful because you also can send CC data and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and make a song structure. But now that it has MIDI out, and I can control external equipment, I'm now planning to really dive into that and see, what happens in the coming weeks here.
Yeah, so you wanna give all your, but then you're actually looking at a sequencer and also like a type of MIDI controller where everything kind of comes together, and if you use a lot of hardware, then it's nice to have something that can hands-on have all your instruments do the same thing, and the beautiful thing about like with this, for me, with the circle sequence, and it probably is possible with any other sequencer now these days as well. Like it was polyphonic, and I was like, oh, okay, that's actually cool, because it's really beautiful to play with the timing if you can just play.
Hey.
I had to reset my router. I'm back.
Okay.
Awesome.
It seems to be working again.
We thought your cabin was blown away by the wind. Like,
I mean, it's windy today, which is why I was like, oh fuck, is the wind gonna make it so that we can't do it? Oh my gosh. Anyways, hi.
Hello.
Hi, hey there.
We were talking sequencer still.
Yeah,
sequences.
Yeah. Hardware sequences.
Yeah.
But I think I always like to state when you talk about equipment or about making music, in the end of the day, it's all about personal taste. It's not about you should work with this.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it seems to be a little bit like, oh, if it's not analog, it's not good, or it's not this or that. And I think in the end of the day, like for some people, they go like, I know loads of people that swear by Octatrack
which is fine, but
and I think that like if you look at it, you fall in love with it, yes or no, and it works, yes or no. And sometimes you think you're gonna buy something, you're like, yes, and then you touch it, you go like, oh, I cannot make friends with this machine.
People are too dogmatic with it.
Yeah.
It's also about budget sometimes, and it's just like some of these things are really expensive.
Sure.
Like you can't do it if you're not using this. It's like, fuck off. Not everyone has like a couple $1,000 to drop on some of these things. Let them use what they want to use. You'll eventually find
something. Good point,
something.
Steffi, that you have to be in love with a certain piece of gear. Yeah, absolutely. And you also, like in real life, you develop a relationship with a piece of gear,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Definitely. That's
I think some people are obsessed with, like, when a new plugin comes out and they go deep into the plugin, they're like and those people have a sense of programming and technology and the possibilities of writing a virtual instrument. I have a massive respect for people that can actually have the ability to write a virtual instrument based on an actual physical instrument and know how to do, like, software wise, know how to make that ready and affordable for your DAW, and I think that's an art itself as well, and some people are like, okay, that's not my world, I need to have something in my hands and it's this or that I like. Or sometimes people even debate about how tight the knob is, but that's probably a lifetime
Right.
I'm sorry. But,
Yeah.
Have you ever sold anything that you regret selling?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I did.
me too.
Yeah.
It's a Juno 60.
Okay.
Like a Juno 60 with. I was like, what the was I thinking?
Yeah.
And I sold Monopoly, Cork Monopoly, and I was like, oh, because I was just having can't be bothered. And then the other day I was listening to some stuff, and I was like, that's the Cork Monopoly, and I was like, all right, well, and then it is what it is. And I said to you, Jochem, the other day, like the Jupiter 6, like I sold that. It was doing nothing for me. Where you were like, oh my God, but what about the sequencer? And if you trigger it and all that.
Yeah, the arpeggiator.
Yeah.
Sorry, the arpeggiator. And I was like, yeah, I know.
By the way,
I know,
arpeggiator.
but it wasn't like I was looking at it and it was just nothing was happening. And then for example, which has nothing to do with each other, but I bought a Pulse 1, which is not like a poly synthesizer of any kind that is to be compared with the Jupiter 6. And I started writing and I was like, this is instantly fell in love with it. And
Which one is
but
that?
if it works for you, then it's great.
Right,
You know?
totally.
Pulse. I remember that. You know, looking for a certain sound, and then somebody says, "But you've got this kind of sound," but it doesn't do anything for me. And then this simple 350 second hand Waldorf Pulse, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And wrote loads of stuff with it, loads. And it's a thing that you can fall back, or a Yamaha DX200, which has all the DX7 and the DX100 in one box.
Great.
So many
with
stuff.
With knobs.
$150.
Right, with the knobs.
With knobs.
Yeah, because that was one. I think that they do the electron. What's it called? The FM.
Digitone.
Digitone. Yeah, they do it now.
Yeah.
And in fact, the DX200 is a predecessor of that, because that was the only synth with actual knobs on an FM interface or an FM on an FM synth. You know. And it makes it so. It's very. I mean, of course, there's very few things that you can actually control with it, but compared to all the parameters that are available, but it makes it so much more fun to use it, you know.
Yeah,
and I think that's the thing that kind of scared me away. And see, what I'm saying is like the Jupiter has nothing to do with a DX200. It's two different. Please say this to a pure. Oh yeah, and then they would say like, you're insane to sell that and then work with this, but I think it's the outcome that's more important, you know.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I think possibilities are really important. Like, it's possible that you can do all this stuff with it, and it's like, but that's not important. I want functionality and to get out of it a little bit quicker. I mean, it's why I don't like. I have never really gotten modular stuff. It's like I how to do synth design. That's not for my brain. Like, my brain sit in the possibilities to be created with this stuff. I just want the my Chord DW8000 or my Alpha G. Like, it's more straightforward than I do right away. But that's what I mean. It's just everyone's different with it. I just think always possibilities are. That seems like it's really important to people. It's possible that it could do all these, or a couple things really well. I like that.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, infinite possibilities are interesting, but not necessarily productive, you know.
And it's
exactly.
But isn't that also like if you're going Eurorack or modular or that kind of stuff? I think that opens up a whole new door. Say this is your room, and then you find out there's another door, and you're walking into that, and there's a whole new play field with people that not necessarily compose music, but they are completely focused on synthesis and what you can do with it, which is also and it's very interesting. I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's not my world, because I get lost and I will never return.
Right, sure.
Like walking into a forest,
same, right.
and you're like, Duke, and you're like, bye, you know.
Yeah.
But like for some people and the stuff they know, I'm fascinated by it. I'm like, wow, okay, wild. This is wild. But not for me, because it will get me too deep into stuff and it prevents me from writing music. Like, and I think I heard Luke Slater was saying something in one of the earlier Knob Twiddler sessions where he was like, if you know what you want to do with a track, like, then you have to maybe limit yourself from going left or right, so you stick onto the path. If I heard that correct, right? You guys talked about it, like, and I think sometimes you can go. If your purpose is writing a track or composing and arranging, then you should maybe not open a whole new drawer of modular systems and start to plug in, and because then you're probably
true, because then you can lose yourself, and then
So it's also like, what's your goal? Like, how fast would you like to have results at the end of the day?
To be honest, I like useless noodling on synths.
Yeah, it's great.
Just plug something in, and or maybe even just do just a really deep dive into something you feel you haven't fully explored yet. Without even planning on making something out of it. And just really, really go deep and try to explore the edges of the machine. And of course, sometimes a useful thing does come out of it, and it's nice.
Yeah.
But if you start without that intention, it is just I can sit behind something for hours and just noodle around and go in all kinds of directions and see where it can go. And
Do you record that? Do you
yeah,
record everything?
the record
Always.
button is always on here. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, really?
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's something that I
Yeah.
should have been doing my entire life.
The
I've
thing-
lost so much stuff where it's like
Oh, yeah.
hours
Like
of playing.
you
It's like, oh, that's cool. I got to make dinner,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
all right.
And you come back and you lost it.
Oh yeah, I'll be like, I'll try to recreate that thing. It's all gone. It's all
And then you
fucking
lost
gone.
idea,
It's like, all
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I came here on the first day after it was officially known that we're going to have a lockdown, and I had this little chain set up, and I started to them. I was like, oh my god, if this is the vibe for the next month, I'm feeling it. So I run over to Virginia. I said, like, come and listen, because I have this is the new me. And she's like, but
The
you want to
new
have
me.
dinner first. And I came back and I was storing the pattern. And I did something wrong. I was completely gone. It was
Oh.
Right, oh,
and
of
it was
course.
a long time.
Oh
It
my
was a
God.
long time
Okay.
since I've not multi-tracked it. And then the feeling of losing something that for you was like a door opening, like, wow, this is the new album. Boom. First
Yeah.
track done. And then came back.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
no.
wow. That's how that feels. I haven't had that for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's the reason why I always record anything
Yeah.
I do. As soon as the power switches are on and the sound starts coming out of the speakers, it's in record mode. Because
Yeah.
the other side effect of that is that if you are just noodling around or setting things up or trying combinations, you are not in the mood or not in the frame of mind to necessarily make something useful. But very often I find that the recordings of those beginnings of sessions actually
They end up
are very
being
interesting
useful.
because
Yeah.
you are not
Yeah.
thinking I
Right.
should come up with something. You are just thinking, where can I go, where can I take this sound, or where can I take this synth or whatever. And the sort of unconscious playing around on machines very often yields very interesting results,
Yeah.
without you even realizing it. If you go back to it and listen to it, oh, that's actually quite good,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
quite useful, or a nice starting point or something like that,
Yeah.
It can be. So yeah, record everything. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Multi-track. Always
Yeah.
multi-track.
I'll start doing that.
Hey, but what's the? I mean, everything you use these days has limitless amount of storage capacity. So
Right.
you can always bin it. If you think,
Mhm.
oh, this was completely
Yeah,
crap,
true.
just delete and there you go. Yeah. Otherwise, you get into the situations like Steffi just told us about. You think,
That was a long
oh,
time
this is
ago,
amazing,
guys.
and then it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, I tend to limit it myself also for do the opposite that you do, Jochem, is like to limit it myself and say like that helped me a lot. Like I see some just starting producers and they're like, oh, but it's sometimes I can't hear it anymore. I said, well, you have to narrow the time frame with that you're working in. Like you say, okay, I give myself an hour, and if it doesn't fit,
Yeah.
it's gone.
Right.
And I guess that's the opposite side of like endless recordings of tweaking that later on you can process into your own samples of implement into songs or use for live or loop or whatever, and I think the opposite is like sometimes for people to not drift off and get sick of their own music is like, okay, I do 3 jams a day and I limit myself to a certain amount of time for one jam. Multi-track it, lock it in, pack it away, and then leave it to rest for a while. And when I come back to it, sometimes
That's what I do as well.
I'm like, oh wow, okay, is
Yeah.
that me? Or like, and then you're very excited about something because it wasn't played to death in your brain.
Right.
That's also a I mean,
Yeah, you still
probably
keep the spark of excitement if you
Yeah,
if you
the
don't
flip side of,
over process it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, but it's I'm using a lot of different gear, trying a lot of different things, but I'm also very impatient, you know. So I want to get something that I like, you know, very very quickly, and um, yeah, so it's always good to have the arsenal of a lot of gear, but you should never try to use everything at the same time or to make it too complicated, you know.
No.
It's
Right.
yeah, in that sense, limiting yourself is more productive
Is
than diving
is a
into
good thing.
the yeah the endless obvious. Oh, I think am I back?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, you're back.
Ah, okay, 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 okay. Anyway, I think I made my point. Let's see if there are any.
I see some questions in the chat.
Oh, if you find something.
Erik de Man, is that our Erik de Man?
Yes.
The one that we know.
Oh,
Hey,
hey, Eric.
Yeah, Erik,
I also saw that Sven Wittekind is here.
Ooh,
Sven Wittekind.
okay.
And Colin, of course, he was there. He was here in the beginning.
Okay.
Here's a question about how you arrange your tracks. I don't know if that's of any interest of anybody telling the secret of success
Arranging tracks?
of arranging tracks.
Well, I've never really been. Okay,
There
hey,
he
oh yeah,
is.
Eric. Hey, Eric.
Hey,
Personally, I record everything in long takes. You know, I've always done stuff live, basically. You know, since the beginning I started making music, it was basically um, uh, a bunch of machines, all the channels split out on a board, and then just press start with everything in a loop, and then mute and unmute things on the fly, you know, and use auxiliaries to send effects and stuff. Very much like, you know, how people make a dub mix, you know, like just let things roll and then yeah, just mute stuff and create like an arrangement on the fly, basically. And I just record an half an hour or an hour or maybe even longer of that going on. And there's always this moment where there is a 5 or 6 or 10 minute section, which is basically
Which is
already,
interesting.
yeah, which is already, you know, good.
tune.
Yeah, it has a nice flow to it, you know. And that might not even have all the sounds in it, you know. It might just be a
Right.
stripped down version of what you started with, but in that way your arrangement develops on the fly and naturally with a sort of flow in it, and to me that is, like I said, I'm impatient. To me that is a way more exciting way to get to an arrangement than just to, you know, copy things around and repeating things. I'm very bad at that, you know. I'm really it's also very hard to break away from standard things that you have kind of memorized or that are part of your workflow. You know, let's start with an intro and then do like a, you know, put something else there, and you know, you sort of everything starts to sound very intentional and very planned in that way. You know, rather than
Yeah.
a free sort of developing freely. You know, so I like to just record an hour or a long chunk of something and let it basically reveal itself, you know, how a track should be arranged.
But I also think
That's
that
interesting.
depends on the type of music that you're producing. Like
More or less.
Like I work. Of course, I work a lot with vocals as well. When I collaborate with Virginia, and it's a whole different way of writing. And,
That's true.
And certain things that you know that needs. For example, if you would write a vocal track, I don't know if this is of any interest, but like there's things that you need to look at like how are you going to introduce a first verse, how are you going to introduce a bridge, what
like more song structure.
Yeah, it's very song structure based. Like, and there's certain
Yeah.
tricks. There's certain tricks in arrangement that can actually, from like the transition from intro into the first verse, and how do you write this in a creative way that you can actually see, like, oh, something's gonna happen, and boom, the first verse comes in. And why is it a first verse, and what plays when the first verse comes in, and what do you keep for a chorus, and sometimes you can't keep everything for a chorus because then the chorus is too busy, so you can write in a middle section where there are no vocals. And that, I think that's, for me, that's where making music starts to get really interesting, because you have to deal with completely different things. Like, there's, in a way, it narrows you down, but I also find that a massive challenge, the fact that you are squeezed within a box, because you're working with, like, it's much more a pop song structure. And I love it. I love it, because every time you're like sitting like, oh, how can we make this work? And then finally you're like, right, what if we, she has sung the whole part, but what if we pull it apart and this section is only there, and then the chorus is actually this instead of the whole chunk, and you have to play with this. And this is also like really interesting way of working. And when you're doing instrumental stuff, you've got the free fall, where, like Jochem, where you're saying, like, you try to leave the mistake so that it's a very natural kind of flow, and not just trying to say, okay, at 17 this needs to happen and a hi-hat needs to come, and that goes like, oh, boring, and then and that's it. I think it's an interesting thing between, like, playing between these worlds, and the limitations and the freedom, and the freedom within the limitation, actually, like how to make that happen. I find it's a massive challenge, and it used to be my biggest nightmare arrangement. My biggest nightmare. I had about 60 loops, throw them all out. It's like, oh, I don't know, until somebody said, like, you have to bite through this whole thing of arranging, and once you've done one, it will pour out of you. And it's actually true. Like, then it starts to happen, and you're getting confident. You're like, oh, this is actually really, really good fun, because it's making what you're saying, Jochem. And it's like you have to make sure that you don't repeat yourself, but then it also can sound like you. And where's the balance between the tricks that that people recognize from you that you do, and is that okay or is that not okay? And how do you play with that spontaneous thing? I find that it's very challenging for me. I love it. I hated it, and now I love it. Yeah.
In Ableton, doing all pieces, but also with the clip mode, just always do live arrangement stuff.
You sounded like Kraftwerk there.
No,
you were breaking up like.
That was by choice. No, just I always found it's really worked for me to do live arrangements and stuff, where I get lots of clips together and then do a live arrangement for the first pass. The first pass or two, always copying and pasting in blocks of it, because I just and I would notice over the years, like, my would always have like 3 minutes in it that would just kind of come intuitively with the live arrangement. But that was the only thing that ever really worked for me, versus like really playing it out, because then it would feel super static.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, live arrangements. Yeah, exactly. That. Yeah.
And that's one of the beautiful things about Ableton Live. If you have recorded all your stuff and you can't do the live jam straight away because you want to work on your mix down, you can just get it all in the loop section and then re-jam it with a controller. I think it's one of the most forceful things in Ableton, that you can recreate your live setting. And if you don't want to do it on a big desk, you can just do it in the jam section in Ableton, which I think was one of the biggest things when that came out.
Patrick, this could be interesting. Does anybody does anybody ever use stem mastering?
I don't.
No, me neither. But
should.
it
It sounds like
Yeah.
shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't it already kind of happen in your buses? I mean, you use an analog desk, right? I mean, that's where, in fact, that is the same as stem mastering, or you kind of group things together. Yeah, you group things together, and you make sure that every group is sitting nicely with the other one.
Yeah,
kind
kind
of,
of. But I think
yeah.
there's people that I know that there are people that are actually specialized in stem mastering and take it all to a next level, and make it sound completely different. So I guess in a way, but like I think what this person maybe is trying to say is like, if somebody like a person comes in before it goes to mastering that actually puts it out and specializes on stem mastering. I think that, for example, Matthew Stiles does a lot of stem mastering. He's a very good stem mastering guy that did a lot of stuff in Berlin. But I think it depends on how much budget you have for your music to sound
Right.
like ultra.
Yeah, but it's also part of the fun, to not to stop there basically and hand it over to somebody else. I mean, for me, it's part of the fun to do at the mixing stage. You basically already agreed that this is something you want to finalize, to yourself, and then it's a lot of fun to see how you can push things a little bit further into make it sound better than it was before. So I mean, final mastering, of course, that's it's always good to have a second pair of ears who can kind of take it to the industry standard level of loudness and stuff. But and also you tend to be more anal about not sacrificing things if you master things yourself, because you kind of are very proud of these little details that you put into the track, and then if you master it yourself, you might have the wrong mindset for the actual mastering job.
Right.
So you kind of work around these things that are valuable to you, although they don't really matter in the big scheme of things, or don't matter in the the power of the idea that you're trying to convey. And these things are only noticeable to yourself and not to anyone else who's going to hear the track. So mastering in that sense is like a second pair of ears, other person's perspective on the audio that you have created. And so in fact, that I think that's a valuable stage in the creation of something that you want to release. But everything up to that point is something that I would like, me in control of, and not someone else.
The one thing we've been doing recently at home is going through each stem, since we press everything to vinyl, is going through and pulling out all the antiphase in
stereo bass,
every single channel before we send it out, so they don't you won't get it back and you're like, why does this sound so much more crunched? All that stereo width is gone. Which has been really, really nice. We've been getting much nicer masters than previous years by doing those things recently.
So can you repeat that again? Like what is it that you're doing?
Oh, we're going through in each audio channel and pulling out all the antiphase, because it's not good for when you're pressing vinyl. So not trying to master it for vinyl, but get it as prepared as possible to give over to the mastering engineer when they go to press it. And it's just made our mix sounds a lot better, and
you get you get a more tight bottom end overall.
Right, totally.
And you don't have to, if you do that on the stereo master, everything gets narrowed down,
because there are
sitting in the same place. And if you do it individually in buses or in even in individual tracks, then you can leave stuff more open at points where it doesn't need the narrowing down. So it does help a lot to get a tighter mix. For sure, it's a good idea.
My cat's trying to eat my... Get out of here!
Oh, yes.
It's the covering table, because my cat's like to all over it. Now my cat's trying to pull the plastic off. He's gone. All right, anyways.
Oh, here's a specific question. what do you use for antiphase? Are you using isotope or something?
I've only been an Ableton utility tool to kind of bring stuff in.
Okay.
And I forget what the other tool we've been using. So Waves, the imager, or whatever, just kind of shift stuff over the stereo imager. But not much about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it's
some
good,
reason-
utility tool is really straightforward for just doing bass mono and just kind of pulling width down a little bit. It's not. It's not a very technical. You have 2 settings on it. But,
yeah.
It's pretty transparent.
Yeah, there's a few tools that are especially designed to do that. You know, you have the isotope imager and
That's it. The isotope
and
the other thing
yeah.
we're using. Yeah.
And there's this Fab Filter EQ Pro Q3 or something that also lets you narrow down certain frequency bands. You know, you can EQ mids and sides and then everything separately. So that's a good one to narrow down bass too. But it's basically just a technical thing, you know. You hit it once, and once it's there, this doesn't have anything to do with listening or not so much as with treating sound for sonic experience. You know, it's more like a job you have to do.
I also think it's
Yeah.
it's something that people don't. I don't know, if you're a beginning producer, it's not something you should be stressing out and paying a ton of attention to. You should be paying more attention to creative and learning stuff. Once, you know, like I've done that stuff for years, so now I'm really trying to learn this other side of it, and that's been a new tool and something to learn. But I just, you know, don't worry about it too much if you're just trying to do your first record. like
No, exactly.
Your skills in the end of the day,
Right.
and with YouTube and the internet, it's so nice that like lots of people that are promoting these plugins or the hardware version of it, that they do a lot of tutorials and introductions how to use the equipment, and it's for people that aren't schooled and not studying SIE or BIM or whatever is available. Then it's really nice that in these modern times you can actually look at online teachings and people that promote the product that actually have very interesting things to say about how to use the plugin and how to troubleshoot certain things. I think anything is pops up when you put your problem into Google or in YouTube.
Right.
Music production.
And it will find a tutorial for it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, God, you know, like if that was there 20 years ago, it would have saved me a lot of trouble. And then still,
it doesn't hurt to find out. It doesn't hurt to find out these things by yourself, though. I mean, you can watch tutorials.
No, I think it's a very important part of the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can watch YouTube forever, finding out how you can do things, but you might as well just get stuck in there and try things out. You know, that's often much more productive.
I think that'll also give you more of a you know, your own like fingerprint on the music that you're creating. If you're if you should really do lots of self exploration before you ever start checking those things out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But what I'm saying is, like, if somebody has to learn about, like, okay, what type of compressor does what type of thing. Of course, you have to start. I mean, I just throw it on, and half of the time I make ugly mistakes because I don't know what I'm doing, and that shapes the sound of the music. But if if you have clashing frequencies and no friend of mine says like, oh yeah, this is how you do it, and that, like, sometimes you have to kind of find out, like, so how do I? Back in the day, you would call somebody like, what can I do, and what are the options? And now there's the internet for people that are isolated or they don't have any friends that make music, and there's a reference that at least you have a starting point of like how to deal with certain problems, you know, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean some of the best tracks come out of mistakes, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
The lucky accidents,
for sure.
The happy accidents.
The happy accidents, for sure.
Here, I was going to ask you all of you about this, about treated rooms and monitoring, because that is something I get a lot of questions about. What monitor should I get? Well, I haven't seen your room, so I don't know what is going to
Yeah.
be the most effective. But yeah, treating rooms in my case here, it's kind of treated, so it's I call it hippie treatment. It's like materials found around the building made into bass traps, and there's nothing sort of off the shelf here. It's all sort of customized DIY kind of approach. And I mean, the best judgment you can use really is your ears. You can have a room acoustically treated and spend like 100 grand on sort of modifying your
Yeah.
box in a box kind of thing. And it might be scientifically accurate, but you also have to have a good feeling about your room. You need
Right.
It has to inspire for me.
yeah, exactly.
You
I
know,
mean, you
yeah.
need if you. I personally can't stand studios which are completely dead. Which are
Oh, yeah.
sort of
makes
scientific.
me
To say spend your money
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
really, go buy another cool synthesizer with a whole bunch of
Yeah.
sound foam.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the best thing I've ever gotten out of and with the room not being treated is I just listen to the file on different headphones or on a stereo on laptop speaker to it at
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
places. The difference with it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you have an actual recording studio, if you record instruments and mic things, it might be. I think it's a more important part of the equation if
Right.
that's what you're doing. But if you are just listening and creating like we do with electronic music, I think the vibe of your sound is a lot more important than the scientific accuracy
Yeah.
compared to a designed room.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I mean, you spend like lots of your times there, so you have to feel comfortable, and in a dead room, I don't really feel it as much as when there's a little bit of a tail here and there from certain
Yeah.
frequency ranges. I mean, it's important that you listen to your room and you use your ears. If you feel that you are getting a pleasant playback of whatever you are doing, even though there is a bit of reverb or there is a bit of a tail in the bottom end of whatever, as long as if you get used to that, you kind of tune your hearing into that as well. So unless it's for very accurate mixing, a room should just sound very pleasant. And like Maya said, you can always listen on other systems, to kind of see how it translates to how people might be listening to it, or so
Also,
yeah, I think,
most clubs when I mean, how many clubs are treated? It's
yeah,
all
true.
spaces anyways. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't want to
That's
create
that's
boomy
a whole
tracks,
different
but
discussion. That's a whole different discussion.
Well, there was actually a question before, so let me look that up, because that was dealing about this subject. Do you change your sound?
You
I'm
spend a lot of money on promo and bullshit, and then you walk into a club and it sounds like shit.
sounds like shit.
yeah.
We have it all the time because Harris and I are like our vinyl only DJs, and the absolutely awful setups for feedback are just insane. Like you show up and you're just like, did you ever want people to be able to play music in this booth? Like I don't.
Yeah.
That's also why people are coming here right now. It might be nice if it, sounded a little bit better. I know these monitors, you've had them for 20 years. They sound like shit now. You should just replace them. That'd be nice.
That's a topic that I think we can do an 8-hour.
Oh, right. No, that's not what this is about, of course.
No, but I hear you. I hear you. Ooh.
So what are you using for monitoring? Which ones which ones work for you?
I have Yamaha HISs.
All right.
Just the tops. My partner Eris has the sub also, which we really like. I'm going to get one for the studio as well. They seem, they're not the greatest, but they don't cost a ton. I got my pair for 400. They seem nice enough.
Yeah,
they work. They work well for me.
Yeah, I have them as well.
Yeah,
I blew one up, but so it's sitting
Yeah,
on the
right.
shelf.
I'm
But,
very worried
yeah,
about
but-
blowing mine up.
Yeah. Well, they're very basic compared to I think they were kind of inspired on the NS10s, but these ones are a load more. There's lots more bass in these Yamahas. Yeah, they sound nice. They're very boomy. They actually have quite a clubby sound.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, personally I switch to between different sets. I have a pair of PMCs, MB2s, and an Adam sub, a 25-inch. Is it 25? Yeah, 25 inches. It's massive. It's really big.
It sounds great.
But I switched to
That's a big sub. Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
the idea of that size sub. That sounds nice.
yeah. Yeah, I mean the whole picture here is really from the very top to the very bottom, and it's all very it's quite accurate. There's, like I said, it's untreated, but you can basically hear all the subtle differences in between synths and stuff. And then I can
Sometimes
switch.
you're lucky with a room. Sometimes you're
Right.
very lucky with a room.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think so.
Like,
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
I can say that
when-
I'm quite
Great, but
lucky here
it's
is
a
with room.
nightmare.
yeah,
Okay.
but
Sometimes
yeah,
you have
but
to make it work.
yeah, also true. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
I'm switching headphones, people, because these are running out of batteries.
Okay.
I think it really depends. Like in
Change the
Berlin, I had a
settings.
guy coming in and he
Mhm.
Anyway, but yeah,
he
switching
tested
between
reflection. Yeah, sorry.
monitors is a thing I always do to get the full picture.
Yeah, makes sense.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes.
You
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes better.
Okay, good. Now I'm sitting here with these crappy ones. The uncomfortable DJ headphones.
The squeezers.
Yeah.
the head squeezers.
yeah, it's fuck with your ears, don't they? I was just gonna say, like in the studio I have in Berlin, I had it treated for or based on reflection and stuff, and
Mhm.
he kind of he kind of left a lot of background noise for a reason, and it was easy for me to work with. And then, for example, here in Portugal, we haven't even been able to set something up, so it's really minimalistic. But then sometimes it's really annoying because you're leaning in one side of the room and it sounds like your bass line's in key, and then you're like, oh, okay.
Right.
But I find that interesting because it's about making it happen, and sometimes you write stuff in very crappy circumstances and you look back and you're like, oh wow, great. And sometimes you're in a perfectly treated room and it
Right.
feels so perfect and you're like, oh, I'm not feeling the vibe. I think that people have to find that out along the way, like how much you need to make it perfect. Like for vocals, yes, of course, it's nice when you've got a beautiful dry boost, so you don't have to, use any extra gear to cut the vocals dry, and then they sound. But then if you start talking about these things, then you have to talk about what kind of microphone you're using. So it's an endless tale of optimization, if that's an English word, actually.
Yeah.
And to optimize stuff. How to improve your sound, and in the end of the day,
Yeah, for creation, if you're basically if you're not recording and just monitoring, I think you should go for a vibey kind of sound in your room. And for recording, you should of course use a booth, or try to get as much reverb from the room out of the equation. But for mixing, a more accurate room is actually making the mixing easier. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, true.
In a good sounding room, the mixing down is a lot easier when you have some kind of treatment. It's not for the writing. For the writing, it doesn't really matter. But it's oh yes, studio headphones. That's another one. Would you recommend to use studio headphones? The DT9090 is. I've got that one. It's good. Hello, Alex. By the way. But there's another one which is a lot cheaper. It's the Sony MDR V6. It's you can still buy them
like
on
the classical ones.
Yeah, buy them on or shops. They don't carry them anymore. But there's a follow up. Just Google it. There's something with 7. I think it's 705 something 7205. I don't know, but it's like under €100 headphones, and they sound absolutely great, you know, for producing music. If you want to check your mix on it, or I find the DT990 very harsh in the high, very you don't. I mean, with some headphones you really have to blast them to get a good sound, and blasting the DT the biodynamic just gives me a headache, you know. And you get a very accurate picture of what's going on in the mix, but at the same time it doesn't have that, you know, speaker oomph or that club feel or whatever. And the Sonys do. They you know, they actually sound like you're in the club, you know. It's or listening to a bigger system, at least, not necessarily a club, but yeah, it sounds more punchy and more vibey. Then it's probably not as accurate, but it's still very, very capable of producing sound that you can trust, you know. Yes, this exactly, the 7506. Thank you, Scott. You mentioned it. That's the MDR 7506. There, the original one, the V6, is out of production, but those are good, in my opinion. What about you? Got any favorites?
Us or the?
You guys. Yeah.
I'm
Go.
I'm using the vocals, the Spirit Professionals. This one.
Oh yeah.
Okay, nice.
And I'm using them together with my. I have a couple of PMC monitors here, and that combination for me works. Yeah, works great. I mean, PMCs for me they're very balanced, reveal a lot of detail, and in combination with this, it's for me it works really, really well. To switch between them,
as well, doesn't it? I
absolutely,
these,
of course.
These Odd Days headphones, which are quite pricey, but for me it was I bought them at a point in my life where I was traveling a lot between my place in Berlin and in Portugal, so it's very close to a studio setting, but you have to pay a lot of money. But like for my ears, I needed something that I could really kind of like have like a very big sound kind of image, and I decided to invest a lot of money in that, because at some point I didn't know where I was going to be, like between Berlin touring and Portugal, so that helped me a lot. But in the end of the day, I think it all depends on budget and trying them out.
Yeah, true.
And then listen in different setups, and sometimes even using the DJ Sennheiser HD25 just as a reference, because if you're DJing a lot, then you know how that sounds, because you're using that on a weekly basis. It depends.
That's what I use,
Yeah,
and I know the
has a very
limitations of it.
natural
I've produced on headphones for years, in the worst way. I've done on urban ears and on earbuds and shit, like the worst. I've made all terrible mistakes for years and years and years.
But nobody that buys your music he knows what.
Yeah, they don't care. They're just
it's what you
right.
get used to. Yeah, some people.
I think the HD25s are fine. I know they're not good. You know what I mean. It's like that's why I also reference tracks on a whole ton of different things, and also use the monitors just to try to get a feel, because I know that there's tons of limitations in it. So I don't want to suggest any of them, because all of my suggestions are bad suggestions.
No, I think actually, you know what? I think using the HD25s as a reference, because you use them for DJing a lot, at least you know what the bass does on those headphones. It's the same with speakers. If you know what the speaker does and how other music sounds on the speaker, then that's a good reference. I know people that mix it down in a professional studio, and then they use a set of computer speakers next to a set of really high quality audio studio monitors, just because they have that studio. If it sounds good on the computer speaker, then you know that.
Yeah, like Auratones. Like Auratones. Yeah, these small.
No, I think that's important. You want to sound.
Also, it depends on what the what is the where does your music need to go? Like these days, everybody has like loads of households have a Sonos speaker. It might even be interesting
of
to
artificial stereo algorithms and stuff like that.
So it might even be interesting to see how that sounds on that kind of speakers or whatever, or on an iPhone or in a car or all that different kind of situations.
Well, I reference the iPhone speaker all the time just because I know that's or the like Mac laptop speakers, just because I know that there's tons of people that are going to listen to it that way, and just like they're on the lowest, the quote lowest quality speakers to listen to it. But it's always been good for references for you're like, well, that bass line I can't hear it at all on this. Which also then might typically I've noticed that like that also will translate to certain clubs and certain sound systems where it's just like they're not all set up the same way with the same speaker system. So you want to be able to hear it on a bunch of different systems, or else it's definitely going to disappear for someone, and you'd be like, that's the whole point of it. And it's like, well, maybe, but you can't hear it, so.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing about mixing on headphones, though, is you miss every bit of acoustic effect, because you are listening to speakers alone, and just that, and listening on any other system, which is not a headphone, a pair of headphones, always gives you some environmental sound, like even on laptops, it travels through the air a lot longer before it reaches your ears. So and especially very, very short percussive sounds, or can be mistaken to be too low on mixing on headphones. Like, for example, the sound that everybody knows, like an 808 rim shot. If you have an 808 rim shot on your headphones, and you have no reverb on it or whatever, it's just a dry one, or any dry drum sound, any very short dry drum sound, or something of that type, it tends to be mistaken for something that's way lower in the mix. And if you listen to it on another system, it's what the fuck? How did this get so loud?
Totally.
Yeah.
That's the same issue with strings. Strings on the headphones are difficult for me to mix, and then strings on the monitors like, that's something completely different. Yeah, it's a bit, sometimes you have to switch between the two of us, or I think it's all a matter of like how you feel comfortable, or in the situation that you are. Sometimes you haven't got the right setting because you're somewhere else or traveling, or some people that constantly work in the same studio have probably a much faster way of getting to know the sound and knowing what certain frequencies do in that room. And
we're getting close to 2 hours, people.
Wow.
Yeah. Gezelligheid kent geen tijd.
As they say.
How do you translate that in English then?
Yeah, that's your job.
Coziness doesn't know time.
Yeah. Are there any things that you want to throw in still? I must say, this is an admin thing. We are going to experiment with something new today. Actually picked up the idea from Colin Benders. We will have there will be an after Knob Twiddlers Hangout kind of thing in Discord, and somewhere there will be a link. I think it's already in the comments or in the description of the video. So people who have more questions than we can answer here, or maybe people who didn't see their questions answered, can go there after, and I'll be there, and Robin will be there. Maybe you want to join.
Yeah.
It's on Discord. It's sort of like a chat, so we can see if we can create a community there to talk with all of you when we're not streaming, basically. So and that's the admin break for now. So yeah, hope to see you there. I mean, that would be nice. Okay, question directly to Robin while we are still on the speaker subject.
Regarding speakers, what I'm using, I was using the TB2SA, which is of the old series Nearfields, and then the biggest one that they had at the time. But if Sofus is going, just go to the PMC website now and have a look at because they have a very big near field range right now. That are, I assume, that are all great monitors. So just have a look there. And I have them for like 15 or 16 years already. So the ones I have are not made anymore.
Mm. Yeah, that's also a thing. I mean, just sticking with a pair of monitors that you know really well is very often very effective. If you swap them all the time, you have to spend a lot of time with your monitors
relearn how they
in your room. Also exactly. So the room and the monitors have a certain signature together, and you have to get used to it for at least a few months. And also about if your room allows it, the placement of it can make a huge difference in how you perceive your music. So it might not be, if there's something that you don't like about the sound, just move them around, create a different position,
and it's very much also personal preference. I really like the ones I have, but other people might not like these very monitors. So
okay, cool. Yeah, so the Hangout Discord thing is now posted. So if people want to join up, if people want to join there, then see you there later. Okay, so anybody has some urgent things still, or should we just call it a day and meet some other time again?
Yeah, sure. Hold on. So
Fantastic.
Cats in the background.
I know.
I see your cat already there. Yeah.
He's the one that's been chewing on the plastic.
Okay, go on then. Just another one last subject: studio animals. Animals in your studio.
It's not a good idea. I'll tell you from no.
Well, I have a dog, and she just lies on the couch, And
that's nice. The cats like to climb up on everything. I have one of my cats like to sit on my DW8000, and but she doesn't like to be touched from like the front. And she was right by the power switch, and I was leaning down to turn off the synth, and she scratched my face. And I was like, I wish they would be in here. Would be nice to not have them here.
You will always have plenty of good social media material, though.
Yes, that's very true. Especially when I'm trying to record a mix, and the cat starts trying to climb on the mixer. I'm like, just don't touch the record. Please don't play with the record. I don't want.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, people. Well, I think that was really great. Really nice to see all of you.
Yeah.
And
great to see all of you as well.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, and thanks for the people who've stayed. Were here with in the comments, and see you next week, same time, same place.
Super.
Bye.
All right. Ciao, ciao.
All right. Ciao.